Hare Krishna, continuing the reading of Chant and Be Happy, Chapter 2. Chanting for Liberation. A conversation about the Hare Krishna mantra between Srila Prabhupada and John Lennon, Yoko Ono, and George Harrison. Montreal Star, June 1969. John Lennon. From Hare Krishna. Yoko. That's where we get it from, We are not denying it. In September 1969, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupāda, Founder-Ācārya of the Hare Krishna movement, arrived as a house guest at Tittenhurst Park, the beautiful 72-acre British estate once owned by John Lennon and later by Ringo Starr. 3 or 4 times a week, the Swami, who later became known to the world as Srila Prabhupada, gave public lectures in a tall, stately building at the northern end of the property, 100 yards from the main house, in which John and Yoko lived. The building had formerly been used as a hall for chamber music recitals, but now several of Srila Prabhupada's disciples, who resided along with him in a block of guest houses on the property, installed a small deity altar and a podium for Srila Prabhupada. The building never really had a name, but after Srila Prabhupada's arrival, everyone called it the temple. On September 14, 1969, John, Yoko, and George Harrison, after enjoying an Indian vegetarian meal prepared by the devotees at the temple, walked over to Srila Prabhupada's quarters for their first meeting. Which mantra to chant? Yoko Ono. If Hare Krishna is such a strong, powerful mantra, is there any reason to chant anything else? For instance, you talked about songs and different mantras. Is there any point in chanting another song or mantra? Srila Prabhupada. There are other mantras, but the Hare Krishna mantra is especially recommended for this age. But other Vedic mantras are also chanted. As I told you, the sages would sit with musical instruments like the tambura and chant them. For instance, Narada Muni, a liberated sage who travels throughout the universe teaching love of God, is always chanting mantras and playing his stringed instrument, the veena. So chanting out loud with musical instruments is not a new thing. It has been done since time immemorial. But the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra is especially recommended for this age. This is stated in many Vedic literatures, such as the Brahmanda Purana, the Kalisantarana Upanishad, the Agni Purana, and so forth. And apart from the statements of the Vedic literature, Lord Krishna himself, in the form of Lord Chaitanya, preached that everyone should chant the Hare Krishna mantra. And many people followed him. When a scientist discovers something, it becomes public property. People may take advantage of it. Similarly, if a mantra has potency, all people should be able to take advantage of it. Why should it remain secret? If a mantra is valuable, it is valuable for everybody. Why should it be only for a particular person? John Lennon. If all mantras are just the name of God, then whether it is a secret mantra or an open mantra, it is all the name of God. So it does not really make much difference, does it? Which one you sing? Srila Prabhupada. It does make a difference. For instance, in a drug shop, they sell all types of medicines for curing the different diseases. But still, you have to get a doctor's prescription in order to get a particular type of medicine. Otherwise, the druggist won't supply you. You might go to the drug shop and say, I am diseased, please give me any medicine you have. The druggist will ask you, where is your prescription? Prescription for the age of Kali. Similarly, in this age of Kali, the present age of quarrel and hypocrisy, the Hare Krishna mantra is prescribed in the Shastras or scriptures. And the great teacher, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, whom we consider an incarnation of God, also prescribed it. Therefore, our principle is that everyone should follow the prescription of the great authorities, and we should follow in their footsteps. That is our business, as stated in the Mahabharata, Vanaparva 313.117. This Vedic mantra says that if you simply try to argue and approach the absolute truth, it is very difficult. By argument and reason, it is very difficult because our arguments and reason are limited and our senses are imperfect. There are many confusing varieties of scriptures, and every philosopher has a different opinion. And unless a philosopher defeats other philosophers, he cannot become recognized as a big philosopher. One theory replaces another, and therefore philosophical speculation will not help us arrive at the absolute truth. The absolute truth is very secret. So how can one achieve such a secret thing? You simply follow the great personalities who have already achieved success. So our Krishna consciousness philosophical method is to follow the great personalities such as Lord Krishna, Lord Chaitanya, and the great spiritual masters in disciplic succession. Take shelter of bona fide authorities and follow them. That is recommended in the Vedas. That will take you to the ultimate goal. You cannot manufacture a mantra. In the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna says the same thing to Arjuna. Evam parampara praptam. In this way, by disciplic succession, the knowledge is coming down. Sakale neha mahata yogo nastah parantapa. But in the course of time, the succession was broken. Therefore, Krishna says, I am speaking to you again. So, a mantra should be received from the disciplic succession. The Vedic injunction is Sampradaya Vihinaye Mantrastu Nishpala Mata. If your mantra does not come through the disciplic succession, it will not be effective. Mantraste Nishpala. Nishpala means that it will not produce the desired result. So the mantra must be received through the proper channel, or it will not act. A mantra cannot be manufactured. It must originate with the Supreme Absolute and come down through the channel of disciplic succession. It has to be received in that way, and only then it will act. Will it act? According to our Krishna consciousness philosophy, the mantra is coming down through 4 channels of disciplic succession. One through Lord Shiva, one through the goddess Lakshmi, one through Lord Brahma, and one through the 4 Kumaras. The same thing comes down through different channels. These are called the 4 Sampradayas, or disciplic successions. So one has to take his mantra from one of these 4 Sampradayas. Then only is that mantra active. If you receive the mantra in that way, it will be effective. And if one does not receive his mantra through one of these Sampradaya channels, then it will not act. It will not give fruit. Yokavono. If the mantra itself has such power, does it matter where you receive it, where you take it? Srila Prabhupada, yes, it does matter. For instance, milk is nutritious. That's a fact. Everyone knows. But if milk is touched by the lips of a serpent, it is no longer nutritious. It becomes poisonous. Yoko Ono. Well, milk is material. Srila Prabhupada. Yes, it is material. But since you are trying to understand spiritual topics through your material senses, we have to give material examples. Yoko Ono. Well, no, I don't think you have to give me the material sense. I mean, the mantra is not material. It should be something spiritual. Therefore, I don't think anybody should be able to spoil it. I wonder if anybody can actually spoil something that is not material. Srila Prabhupada. But if you don't receive the mantra through the proper channel, it may not really be spiritual. John Lennon. How would you know anyway? How are you able to tell? I mean, for any of your disciples or us or anybody else who goes to any spiritual master, how are we to tell if he is for real or not? Srila Prabhupada. You shouldn't go to just any spiritual master. Who is a genuine guru? John Lennon. Yes, we should go to a true master. But how are we to tell one from the other? Srila Prabhupada. It is not that you can go to just any spiritual master. He must be a member of a recognized sampradaya, a particular line of disciplic succession. John Lennon. But what if one of these masters who is not in the line says exactly the same thing as one who is? What if he says his mantra is coming from the Vedas and he seems to speak with as much authority as you? He could probably be right. It is confusing, like having too many fruits on a plate. Srila Prabhupada. If the mantra is actually coming through a bona fide disciplic succession, then it will have potency. John Lennon. But the Hare Krishna mantra is the best one? Srila Prabhupada. Yes. Yoko Ono. Well, if Hare Krishna is the best one, Why should we bother to say anything else other than Hare Krishna? Srila Prabhupada, it is true. You don't have to bother with anything else. We say that the Hare Krishna mantra is sufficient for one's perfection, for liberation. Judge Harrison, isn't it like flowers? Somebody may prefer roses and somebody may like carnations better. Isn't it really a matter for the individual devotee to decide? One person may find that Hare Krishna is more beneficial to his spiritual progress, and yet another person may find that some other mantra may be more beneficial for him. Isn't it just a matter of taste, like choosing a flower? They're all flowers, but some people may like one better than the other. Srila Prabhupada, but still, there is a distinction. A fragrant rose is considered better than a flower without any scent. Yoko Ono. In that case, I can't. Srila Prabhupada, let's try to understand this flower example. Yoko Ono, okay. Srila Prabhupada, you may be attracted by one flower and I may be attracted by another flower. But among the flowers, a distinction can be made. There are many flowers that have no fragrance and many that have fragrance. Yoko Ono, is the flower that has fragrance better? Srila Prabhupada, yes. Therefore, your attraction for a particular flower is not the solution to the question of which is actually better. In the same way, personal attraction is not the solution to choosing the best spiritual process. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says, as all surrender to me, I reward them accordingly. Everyone follows my path in all respects, O son of Purusa. Krishna is the supreme absolute. If someone wants to enjoy a particular relationship with him, Krishna presents himself in that way. It is just like the flower example. You may want a yellow flower, and that flower may not have any fragrance. That flower is there. It is for you. That's all. But if someone wants a rose, Krishna gives him a rose. You both get the flower of your choice. But when you make a comparative study of which is better, the rose will be considered better. Yoko Ono. I see a pattern in what you have said. For instance, you said that Hare Krishna is the most super powerful word. And if that is true, then why do we bother to utter any other words? I mean, is it necessary? And why do you encourage us, saying that we are songwriters and all, to write any other song than Hare Krishna? Srila Prabhupada. Chanting the Hare Krishna mantra is the recommended process for cleaning our hearts. So actually, one who chants Hare Krishna regularly doesn't have to do anything else. He's already in the correct position. He doesn't have to read any books. Yoko Ono, yes, I agree. So why do you say that it is all right to write songs, speak, and all that? It's a waste of time, isn't it? Srila Prabhupada, no, it's not a waste of time. For instance, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would spend most of his time simply chanting. He was a sannyasi, a member of the renounced spiritual order of life. So he was criticized by great sannyasis who said, you have become a sannyasi and yet you do not read the Vedanta Sutra. You are simply chanting and dancing. In this way, they criticized his constant chanting of Hare Krishna. But when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu met such stalwart scholars, he did not remain silent. He established the chanting of Hare Krishna by sound arguments based on the Vedic scriptures. Chanting for liberation. Chanting Hare Krishna is sufficient for liberation. There is no doubt about it. But if someone wants to understand the Hare Krishna mantra through philosophy, through study, through Vedanta, then we do not lack information. We have many books. But it is not that the Hare Krishna mantra is somehow insufficient and therefore we are recommending books. The Hare Krishna mantra is sufficient. But when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was chanting, he sometimes had to meet opposing scholars such as Prakashananda Saraswati and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And then he was ready to argue with them on the basis of Vedanta. So we should not be dumb. If someone comes to argue with Vedanta philosophy, then we must be prepared. When we are preaching, many different types of people will come with questions. We should be able to answer them. Otherwise, the Hare Krishna mantra is sufficient. It does not require any education, any reading, or anything else. Simply by chanting Hare Krishna, you get the highest perfection. That's a fact. Chapter 3. Srila Prabhupada brings the Hare Krishna mantra to the West. When His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, first arrived in America in the midst of the cultural turmoil of the 60s, he quickly captured the hearts and minds of the New York hippies and the San Francisco flower children with the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. In 1969, he journeyed to London, and by 1971, Hare Krishna had been recorded on hit records by former Beatles John Lennon and George Harrison. By then, the mantra had been heard by hundreds of millions of people, and the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, formed in New York in 1966, had spread to 6 continents. How could an elderly Indian Swami in a foreign land with no money, no support, no friends, and no followers achieve such phenomenal success? The story that follows includes eyewitness accounts and excerpts from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, the authorized biography of this extraordinary saint, written by one of his intimate disciples, Sasarupa Das Goswami. The arduous sea voyage from Calcutta to Boston was finally over. The lone passenger aboard the cargo ship Jaladuta, a 69-year-old Indian holy man, had been given free passage by the owner of this India Steamship Company. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada arrived at Commonwealth Pier on September 17, 1965. For thousands of years, Krishna Bhakti, love of Krishna, had been known only in India. But now, on the order of his spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada had come to awaken the natural dormant Krishna consciousness of the American people. On his arrival day on board the Jaladuta, he wrote in his diary the following words. Absorbed in material life, they, Americans, think themselves very happy and satisfied, and therefore they have no taste for the transcendental message of Vasudeva, Krishna. But I know that your causeless mercy can make everything possible, because you are the most expert mystic. How will I make them understand this message of Krishna consciousness? O Lord, I am simply praying for your mercy, so that I will be able to convince them about your message. I am seeking your benediction. I have no devotion, nor do I have any knowledge, but I have strong faith in the holy name of Krishna. In 1922, Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master, His Divine Grace Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, had requested him to spread the teachings of Lord Krishna, including the Hare Krishna mantra, to the West. And now, after a lifetime in preparation, Srila Prabhupada was ready to begin. After landing in America with the Indian rupee equivalent of $8, he spent his first 7 months in the United States with a family in Butler, Pennsylvania, with an Indian yoga teacher in Manhattan, and later with the help of friends in a bare-rented office in the same part of the city. By the summer of 1966, he had found a larger location more suited to propagating the Hare Krishna Mahamantra and the ancient science of Krishna consciousness. That summer, Prabhupada had met a young man named Harvey Cohen, who offered him an old artist-in-residence loft in Lower Manhattan's Bowery. Here, a small group of young Bohemian types would join Srila Prabhupada every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday evening for chanting Hare Krishna and classes on the Bhagavad Gita. Although not yet incorporated or known by its present name, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness had been born. Few of Srila Prabhupada's guests, whose interests included music, drugs, macrobiotics, pacifism, and spiritual meditation, knew very much about what they were chanting or exactly why they were chanting it. They just enjoyed it and liked it being it in the presence of the man they affectionately called Swamiji. These musicians, artists, poets, intellectuals, most of whom had chosen to live outside of mainstream society, felt that by chanting Hare Krishna, they were taking part in something mystical and unique. Srila Prabhupada led to the solo chanting, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. The melody was always the same, a simple 4-note phrase, the first 4 notes of the major scale. Prabhupada led the kirtan with small 3-inch diameter hand cymbals he had brought with him from India. He would ring them in a 1-2-3, 1-2-3 fashion. Some of his followers clapped along with him and some joined in with small finger symbols of their own. Others sat in yoga postures, hand outstretched, chanting and meditating on this novel transcendental vibration. Guests would sometimes bring other instruments, including guitars, tamboras, flutes, tambourines, and a wide variety of drums. After a few months, some of Srila Prabhupada's followers secured for him a better place to live and spread the chanting of the holy name. The new Second Avenue location on the hippie-filled Lower East Side included an apartment for Srila Prabhupada, one floor up, and a ground floor storefront, which he would use as a temple. Within a few weeks, the small 60 by 25-foot storefront was packed with young people 3 nights a week. Gradually, the storefront took on the appearance of a temple as visitors began to bring tapestries and paintings for the walls, carpets for the floors, and amplification equipment for Srila Prabhupada's lectures and kirtans. Prabhupada's kirtans were lively and captivating, with numerous guests spontaneously rising to their feet, clapping and dancing. Srila Prabhupada, always conducting the kirtana, group chanting in call and response fashion, and playing a small African bongo-like drum, would accelerate the chant faster and faster until after about half an hour it would reach a climax and suddenly end. Chanting along with Srila Prabhupada in the small room on Second Avenue, guests found themselves transported into another dimension, a spiritual dimension, in which the anxieties and pressures of everyday life in New York City simply did not exist. Many soon caught on that chanting Hare Krishna was an intense and effective form of meditation, a direct means of communion with something greater than themselves, no matter what their conception of the Absolute. Srila Prabhupada initiated his first disciples in September of 1966, at which time about a dozen students vowed to chant a minimum of 16 rounds a day on their beats. This meant reciting the 16-word mantra 1,728 times a day, a meditation that would take them between 1.5 to 2 hours to complete. Prabhupada's flock soon began to print and distribute invitations and leaflets such as this one. Practice the transcendental sound vibration. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This chanting will cleanse the dust from the mirror of the mind. Another invited America's youth to stay high forever, no more coming down. Practice Krishna Consciousness. Expand your consciousness by practicing the asterisk transcendental sound vibration asterisk. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. In the morning, Srila Prabhupada would lead the devotees in one round of japa, chanting on beats. After chanting with Prabhupada, the devotees would chant the remaining 16 rounds on their own. The celebrated American poet Allen Ginsberg, accompanying the kirtan on his harmonium, had by now become a regular at the evening chanting sessions at the temple and the nearby Tompkins Square Park. In a 1980 interview published in Srila Prabhupada's biography, he recalled his experiences. Alan, I liked immediately the idea that Swami Bhaktivedanta had chosen the Lower East Side of New York for his practice. I was astounded that he would come with the chanting because it seemed like a reinforcement from India. I had been running around singing Hare Krishna, but had never understood exactly why or what it meant. I thought it was great now that he was here to expound on the Hare Krishna mantra. That would sort of justify my singing. I knew what I was doing, but I didn't have any theoretical background to satisfy further inquiry. And here was someone who did. So I thought that was absolutely great. If anyone wanted to know the technical intricacies and the ultimate history, I could send them to him. He had a personal, selfless sweetness like the total devotion. And that was what always conquered me, a kind of personal charm coming from dedication. I always liked to be with him. The chanting of Hare Krishna seemed to spread in almost magical way. And as time went on, the number of people interacted to it increased exponentially. Even in this unlikely New York setting, the mantra seemed to have a life of its own. Whether it was the melody, the beat, the sound of the words, the look of the devotees, or Prabhupada's humility or serenity, nearly everyone who then came in touch with the chanting of Hare Krishna responded favorably. In December 1966, Srila Prabhupada would explain on his first record album, the LP that introduced two of the Beatles, John Lennon and George Harrison, to Hare Krishna, that the chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare is not material sound vibration, but comes directly from the spiritual world. Prabhupada's Tompkins Square Park kirtans were spiritual happenings that are now legendary. Hundreds of people from all walks of life took part, some as observers and some as eager participants, chanting, clapping their hands, dancing, and playing musical instruments. Irving Halpern, one of many local musicians who regularly practice, remembers the scene. Irving. The park resounded. The musicians were very careful in listening to the mantras. I have talked to a couple of musicians about it, and we agreed that in his head, this Swami must have had hundreds and hundreds of melodies that had been brought back from the real landing from the other side of the world. So many people came there just to tune into the musical gift, the transmission of the Dharma. Hey, they would say, listen to this holy monk. People were really sure they were going to be unusual feats, grandstanding, flashy levitations, or whatever people expected was going to happen. But when the simplicity of what the Swami was really saying, when you began to sense it, whether you're motivated to actually make a lifetime commitment and go this way of life, or whether you merely wanted to place it in a place and give certain due respect to it, it turned you around. And that was interesting too. The different ways in which people regarded the kirtan. Some people thought it was a prelude. Some people thought it was a main event. Some people liked the music. Some people liked the poetic sound of it. After the kirtan, Srila Prabhupada usually spoke for a few minutes about Krishna consciousness, inviting everyone back to the temple for a Sunday afternoon love festival of chanting and feasting. A weekly event that soon became a tradition that continues today. The October 10th edition of the New York Times described the Tompkins Square Park Kirtan with the following headline: Swami's flock chants in park to find ecstasy. Sitting under a tree in a Lower East Side park and occasionally dancing, 50 followers of a Hindu Swami repeated a 16-word chant for 2 hours yesterday afternoon to the accompaniment of cymbals, tambourines, sticks, drums, bells, and a small reed organ. The repetition of the chant, Swami A.C. Bhaktivedanta says, is the best way to achieve self-realization in this age of destruction. Many in the crowd of about 100 persons standing around the chanters found themselves swaying to or clapping hands in time to the hypnotic rhythmic music. It brings a state of ecstasy, said Allen Ginsberg, the poet. The ecstasy of the chant or mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, has replaced LSD and other drugs for many of the Swami's followers. At the same time, New York's avant-garde newspaper, the East Village Other, ran a front page story with a full-page photograph of Srila Prabhupada standing and speaking to a large group of people in the park. The banner headline read, Save Earth Now, and in large type just below the picture, the Maha Mantra was printed. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. The article admired the chanting and described how Srila Prabhupada had succeeded in convincing the world's toughest audience, Bohemians, acid heads, potheads, and hippies, that he knew the way to God. Turn off, sing out, and fall in. This new brand of holy man, with all due deference to Dr. Larry, has come forth with a brand of consciousness expansion that is sweeter than acid, cheaper than pot, and non-bustable by fuss. The newspaper story described how a visit to the temple at 26th Avenue would bring living, visible, tangible proof that God is alive and well. The story quoted one of Srila Prabhupada's new disciples. I started chanting to myself, like the Swami said. When I was walking down the street, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, over and over. And suddenly everything started looking so beautiful. The kids, the old men and women, even the creeps looked beautiful. To say nothing of the trees and flowers. Finding it superior to the euphoria from any kind of drug, he said, there is no coming down from this. I can always do this anytime, anywhere. It is always with you. To San Francisco and beyond. Early in 1967, several of Srila Prabhupada's disciples left New York and opened a temple in the heart of San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury district, home for thousands of hippies and flower children from all over the country. Within a short time, Srila Prabhupada's temple there had become a spiritual haven for troubled, searching, and sometimes desperate young people. Drug overdoses were common, and hundreds of confused, dazed, and enchanted young Americans roamed the streets. Haridas, the first president of the Haridas, the first president of the San Francisco Temple, remembers what it was like. Haridas, the hippies needed all the help they could get, and they knew it. And the Radha Krishna Temple was certainly a kind of spiritual haven. Kids sensed it. They were running, living on the streets, no place where they could go, where they could rest, where people were not going to hurt them. I think it saved a lot of lives. There might have been a lot more casualties if it had not been for Hare Krishna. It was like opening a temple in a battlefield. It was the hardest place to do it, but it was the place where it was the most needed. Although the Swami had no precedents for dealing with any of this, he applied the chanting with miraculous results. The chanting was wonderful. It worked. Michael Bowen, an artist and one of the leading figures of the Haight-Ashbury scene, recalled that Srila Prabhupada had an amazing ability to get people off drugs, especially speed, heroin, burnt-out LSD cases, all of that. Every day at the temple, devotees cooked and served to over 200 young people a free, sumptuous multi-course lunch of vegetarian food offered to Krishna. Many local merchants helped to make this possible by donating to the cause. An early San Francisco devotee recalls those days. Harsharani. People who were plain lost or needed comforting sort of wandered or staggered into the temple. Some of them stayed and became devotees, and some just took prasad, spiritual food, and left. Just from a medical standpoint, doctors didn't know what to do with people on LSD. The police and the free clinics in the area couldn't handle the overload of people taking LSD. The police saw Swamiji, Srila Prabhupada, as a certain refuge. Throughout lunch, devotees played the New York recording of Srila Prabhupada chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. The sacred sound reinforced the spiritual mood of the temple and helped to ease the tensions and frustrations of its young guests. Sunday, January 29, 1967, marked the major spiritual event of the San Francisco hippie era, and Srila Prabhupada, who was ready to go anywhere to spread Krishna consciousness, was there. The Grateful Dead, Moby Grape, Janis Joplin, and Big Brother, and the Holiday Holding Company, Jefferson Airplane, Quicksilver Messenger Service, all the new wave San Francisco bands had agreed to appear with Srila Prabhupada at the Avalon Ballroom's Mantra Rock Dance, proceeds from which would go to the local Hare Krishna temple. Thousands of hippies anticipating an exciting evening packed the hall. LSD pioneer Timothy Leary dutifully paid the standard $2.50 admission fee and entered the ballroom, followed by Augustus Owsley Stanley III, known for his own brand of LSD. At about 10 p.m., Srila Prabhupada and a small entourage of devotees arrived amid uproarious applause and cheering by a crowd that had waited weeks in great anticipation for this moment. Srila Prabhupada was given a seat of honor on stage and was introduced by Allen Ginsberg, who explained his own realizations about the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra and how it had spread from the small storefront in New York to San Francisco. The well-known poet told the crowd that the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra in the early morning at the Radha Krishna temple was an important community service to those who were coming down from LSD, because the chanting would stabilize their consciousness on re-entry. The chanting started slowly but rhythmically, and little by little it spread throughout the ballroom, enveloping everyone. Hippies got to their feet, held hands, and began to dance as enormous pulsing pictures of Krishna were projected around the walls of ballroom in perfect sync with the beat of the mantra. By the time Srila Prabhupada stood and began to dance with his arms raised, the crowd was completely absorbed in chanting, dancing, and playing small instruments they had brought for the occasion. Ginsburg later recalled, "We sang Hare Krishna all evening. It was absolutely great, an open thing. It was the height of the height Ashbury spiritual enthusiasm. As the tempo speeded up, the chanting and dancing became more and more intense, spurred on by a stage full of top rock musicians who were as charmed by the magic of the Maha Mantra as the amateur musicians had been at the Town Square Kirtanas only a few weeks before. The chant rose. It seemed to surge and swell without limit. When it seemed to go no further, the chanting stopped. Srila Prabhupada offered prayers to his spiritual master into the microphone and ended by saying 3 times, "All glories to the assembled devotees." The Haight-Ashbury neighborhood buzzed with talk of the mantra rock dance for weeks afterward. Within a few months of the mantra rock event, devotees in San Francisco, New York, and Montreal began to take to the streets with their murdangas, clay drums, and kartalas, hand cymbals, to chant the Maha Mantra on a daily basis. In just a few years, temples were opening all over North America and Europe, and people everywhere were hearing the chanting of Hare Krishna. On May 31st, 1969, when the Vietnam War protest movement was reaching its climax, 6 devotees joined John Lennon and Yoko Ono in their Montreal hotel room to play instruments and sing on John and Yoko's famous recording, "Give Peace a Chance." This song, which included the mantra and a hit single, Hare Krishna Mantra, produced in September of the same year by Beatle George Harrison and featuring the devotees, introduced millions to chanting. Even Broadway's long-running musical hit Hair included exuberant choruses of the Hare Krishna Mantra. At the now historic mass anti-war demonstration in Washington, D.C. on November 15, 1969, devotees from all over the United States and Canada chanted the Hare Krishna Mantra throughout the day and distributed the Peace Formula, a small leaflet based on Srila Prabhupada's teachings from the Vedic scriptures. The Peace Formula, which proposed a spiritual solution to the problem of war, was distributed en masse for many months and influenced thousands of lives. By 1970, when George Harrison's My Sweet Lord, with its beautiful recurring lyrics of Hare Krishna and Hare Rama, was the international #1 hit song of the day, devotees in dhotis and charis chanting the Maha Mantra with musical instruments were now a familiar sight in almost every major city throughout the world. Because of Srila Prabhupada's deep love for Lord Krishna and his own spiritual master, his amazing determination and his sincere compassion, Hare Krishna had become a household word. Chapter 4, Chanting for Higher Consciousness, a Cultural History. It is a scene that has been repeated countless times on the thoroughfares of cities throughout the Western world, from Hollywood Boulevard in Los Angeles to Fifth Avenue in New York, from Oxford Street in London to the Champs-Élysées in Paris. There, in the midst of traffic, shops, restaurants, and movie theaters, people suddenly find themselves confronted by a group of young persons singing and dancing to the beat of cylindrical drums and the brassy cadence of hand cymbals. The men are dressed in flowing robes and have shaven heads. The women wear colorful Indian saris. Of course, it is the Hare Krishna people chanting their now familiar mantra, the Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. But what is actually going on? Is it some form of protest, avant-garde street theater, a religious demonstration, or what? If you were to ask them, you would learn that these people are performing a type of meditation long encouraged and practiced in the West, the chanting of the holy names of God. Krishna is the Sanskrit name for the Supreme Lord. Of course, meditation is a word that is thrown around quite loosely these days. It has come to mean practically any technique employed to silence and calm the harried modern mind. But the ancient and authorized form of meditation practiced by Hare Krishna people has a much deeper and more sublime purpose. Although it easily soothes the turbulent mind, it also awakens those who chant it to their original joyful spiritual nature and consciousness, imparting a genuine sense of pleasure unavailable by any other means. The Vedas, scriptures containing the timeless spiritual knowledge of ancient India, state that such an awakening process is desperately needed because everyone in this material world is in a sleeping, dreamlike condition. We have forgotten our original spiritual identity, accepting instead a temporary material body composed of physical elements as our real self. The Vedas compare the material body to the subtle forms we experience in dreams. While sleeping, we forget our normal waking identity, and many find them ourselves enjoying or suffering in different types of bodies. But when we hear the ringing of the alarm clock, we awaken and return to normal consciousness. We remember who we are and what we should be doing. Similarly, by hearing the powerful transcendental sound vibrations of the Hare Krishna mantra, we can gradually wake up to our original self, the soul, which is characterized by eternality and is full of knowledge and ever-increasing pleasure. The sages of ancient India therefore tell us that the goal of human life should not be to try to enjoy our temporary dreamlike situation in the material world. Rather, we are advised to awaken to our original spiritual nature and ultimately return to our true home in the spiritual world, where we may enjoy an eternal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. This search for the true self through the meditative process is not something recently discovered, nor is it in any way alien to the basically rationalistic philosophical and spiritual traditions of the West. Although Western civilization has for the most part directed its energies outward in various efforts to control and exploit the resources of nature, there have always been inward-directed philosophers, saints, and mystics who have dedicated themselves to a higher purpose than material well-being, which is in all cases temporary. The search for the self. The Greek philosophers Socrates and Plato held a view of man's original nature quite similar to that of the Vedic sages. This temporary world, they taught, is not our real home. We once existed in a spiritual world. In Plato's famous dialogue, Socrates says that in our original condition, we were pure ourselves and not yet enshrined in that living tomb which we carry about. Now that we are imprisoned in the body like an oyster in his shell. The purpose of philosophy for these earthly Athenian thinkers was to awaken a person to his original spiritual identity, now hidden within the covering of the physical body. Phaedrus, translated by Benjamin Jowett. The very same thing was taught in Galilee 400 years later by Jesus Christ. In the Gospel of St. John, Christ says, "It is the spirit that quickeneth, the flesh profiteth nothing." In other words, the body is simply an external covering for the soul, which is the real life-giving force. Therefore, Jesus warns, "What profiteth a man if he gain the whole world but lose his immortal soul?" The highest goal of life, Christ taught, is to understand and experience our inner spiritual nature. In the Gospel of St. Luke, Jesus instructs humankind to look within for true spiritual life. Neither shall they say, "Lo here," or "Lo there," for behold, the kingdom of God is within you. John 6:63, Mark 8:36, Luke 17:21. Describing his inner search for God through meditation, St. Augustine, great saint and eminent philosopher of the Roman Catholic Church, tells us in Confessions how his mind withdrew its thoughts from experience, abstracting itself from the contradictory throng of sensuous images. Confessions, translated by C. Biggie, London, Methuen and Company Limited, page 244. During the Middle Ages in Europe, there was widespread interest in meditation, with many saints and philosophers writing of their thoughts about the inner quest for divine reality. Thomas A. Kempis, in his classic Imitation of Christ, cautions us about material life and summarizes the purpose and goal of meditation. What do you seek here, since the world is not your resting place? Your true home is in heaven. Therefore, remember that all things of this world are transitory. All things are passing and yourself with them. See that you do not cling to them, lest you become entangled and perish with them. Let all your thoughts be with the Most High. Imitation of Christ, translated by Leo Shirley Price, Baltimore, Penguin Classics Edition. When one achieves this deep spiritual vision, his entire worldview is completely transformed, as in the case of Saint Francis of Assisi, who devoted his life to prayer and meditation. In his life of Saint Francis, Saint Bonaventure writes, "In all fair things he beheld him who is most fair, and through the traces of him which he had implanted in all his creatures, he was led on to reach the all-loved, constructing of these things a ladder whereby he might ascend to him who is loveliness itself." In other words, when one's original spiritual consciousness is revived, one sees God everywhere and in everything. One enters a unique world of spiritual knowledge and pleasure, far superior to what most of us perceive as reality, a spiritual reality that lies just beyond our ordinary abilities of perception. William James, the American philosopher who specialized in the psychology of religion, writing on this point, said, "Our normal waking consciousness, rational consciousness as we call it, is but one special type of consciousness, whilst all about it, parted from it by the filmiest of screens, there lie potential forms of consciousness entirely different. We may go throughout life without suspecting their existence, but apply the requisite stimulus, and at a touch, they are there in all their completeness." The Life of St. Francis, New York, Everyman's Library, 1912. The Varieties of Religious Experience, William James, London, Longman, Green and Company, page 388. But what is the requisite stimulus for awakening the dormant consciousness of the self and God that lies within everyone's heart? All genuine spiritual authorities agree that such transcendental experiences cannot be awakened by any material stimulus or experience, including the ingestion of mind-expanding or mind-altering drugs. When Srila Prabhupada was asked by a follower of Timothy Leary about LSD's place in a person's spiritual life, Srila Prabhupada said that drugs were not necessary for a spiritual life, that they could not produce spiritual consciousness, and that all drug-induced religious visions were simply hallucinations. To realize God was not so easy or cheap that one could do it just by taking a pill or smoking. Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, Sasarup Das Goswami, Los Angeles, Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, 1980, page 201. Sound and self-realization. The Vedic scriptures advise that the proper technique for awakening spiritual consciousness is the hearing and chanting of transcendental sounds or mantras, like the Hare Krishna mantra. The power of sound to effect changes in consciousness has long been recognized. The English philosopher and statesman Sir Francis Bacon noted that the sense of hearing striketh the spirit more immediately than any other senses. Silva Silverum in Works, edition James Spedding et al., New York, 1864, 4, page 231. Ordinary material sounds, however, will not awaken spiritual consciousness. For this, one must hear spiritual sound vibration. For this, one must hear spiritual sound vibrations. Therefore, almost every religion in the world recommends that we meditate on the Word of God. St. John wrote in his Gospel, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." Divine sound is thus of a vastly different quality than worldly or material sound. This fact was clearly explained by St. Augustine in his Confessions. Once, as he emerged from a mystic trance, he said he heard again the babble of our own tongues, wherein each word has a beginning and an ending. For unlike thy word, our Lord, who abideth in himself, never growing old and making all things new. And in the Gospel of St. John, Christ says, "The words that I speak unto you, they are spirit." John 1:1, Confessions 10, page 321. John 6:63. While the word or teachings of God have enormous power to transform and uplift our lives, The actual names of God are just as important when they are praised aloud in song or quietly meditated on. Since God is fully spiritual and absolute, the Vedic scriptures inform us that his holy names are invested with the Lord's full spiritual potencies. God and his name are the same. India's Padma Purana states, there is no difference between the holy name of the Lord and the Lord himself. As such, the holy name is as perfect as the Lord himself. The Stoic philosopher Maximus noted, there is one supreme God who is, as it were, the God and mighty Father of all. It is him, he said, whom we worship under many names. Modern Jewish theologian Martin Buber also agreed, all God's names are hallowed. Comparative Religion, Esther Carpenter, 1913, page 35. Worship in the World's Religions, Geoffrey Parinder, London, Faber and Faber, 1961, page 7. And the Bible is replete with similar statements. In the Old Testament, it is said, the name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous runneth into it, and it is safe. In Psalms, King David proclaims, I will praise the name of God with a song. Indeed, the Psalms contain many references to the name of God. All nations whom thou hast made shall come and worship before thee, O Lord, and shall glorify thy name. O give thanks unto the Lord, call upon his name, make known his deeds among the people. Sing unto him, sing psalms unto him. Talk ye of all his wondrous works, glory ye in his holy name. Praise him with the timbrel and dance. Praise him with stringed instruments and organs. Praise him upon the loud cymbals. The prophet Isaiah described God as one that inhabiteth eternity and whose name is holy. Centuries later, Israel Baal Shem Tov, 1699 to 1761, the great Jewish mystic founded Hasidism, a popular pietistic movement within Judaism, in which members dance and chant in glorification of the supreme law. Proverbs 18:10. Psalms 16:30, Psalms 86:9, Psalms 105, 1-4, Psalms 150, 4-5, Isaiah 57:15. Christ, when teaching his disciples how to pray, glorified the Lord's holy name. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. And his epistle to the Romans, St. Paul wrote, for whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. Romans 10:13. In the early Christian churches, there was, according to the historian Eusebius, one common consent in chanting for the praises of God. The Gregorian chants, popularized in the 6th century by the Pope Gregory the Great, and later by works like Handel's masterpiece Messiah, with its resounding choruses of Hallelujah, Praised be Lord, are still performed and appreciated all over the world. Ecclesiastical history. In addition to praising the Lord's name and glories in song, there also developed in the Christian churches the practice of meditating on God by chanting prayers on rosary beads, a tradition continued today by millions of Catholics worldwide. John Chrysostom, a saint of the Greek Orthodox Church, especially recommended the prayerful invocation of the name of God, which he said should be practiced uninterrupted. The Way of a Pilgrim, translated R.M. French, London, Society for Promoting Christian Knowledge. The repetition of the Jesus prayer, Lord Jesus, Son of God, have mercy on me, became a regular practice among members of the Eastern Church. In The Way of a Pilgrim, a Russian monk describes this form of meditation. The continuous interior prayer of Jesus is a constant, uninterrupted calling upon the divine name of Jesus with the lips, in the spirit, in the heart. One who accustoms himself to this appeal experiences as a result so deep a consolation and so great a need to offer the prayer always that he can no longer live without it. Ibid. Among the followers of Islam, the names of God, Allah, are held sacred and meditated on. According to tradition, there are 99 names of Allah, called the beautiful names. They are found inscribed on monuments such as the Taj Mahal and on the walls of mosques. These names are chanted on an Islamic rosary, which consists of 3 sets of 33 beads. Worshippers repeat the names to help them concentrate their minds on Allah. The words Bismillah al-Rahman al-Rahim, meaning God the most gracious, God the compassionate, are invoked at the beginning of each chapter of the Quran. Other Arabic names of God glorify Him as the Creator, Provider, and King. In India, the Sikhs place special emphasis on the name of God. Indeed, the Sikhs call God Nama, the name. Guru Nanak, founder of the Sikh religion, prayed, "In the ambrosial hours of the morn, I meditate on the grace of the true name," and said that he was instructed by the Lord in a vision to go and repeat my name and cause others to do likewise. Japji, the meditations of Guru Nanak. Rosaries are widely used in Buddhism, large ones by monks, smaller ones by the laity, says Geoffrey Parinder, a professor of comparative religion at the University of London, in his book, Worship in the World's Religions. The large ones have 108 beads, the two halves representing the 54 stages of becoming a bodhisattva, enlightened one. The large bead in the middle stands for Buddha. Members of Japan's largest Buddhist order, the Pure Land sect, practice repetition of the name of Buddha, Namu Amida Butsu. The founder, Shinran Shonin, says, the virtue of the holy name, the gift of him that is enlightened, is spread throughout the world. The Buddhist teachings reveal that by chanting the name of Buddha, the worshipper becomes liberated from the cycle of reincarnation and joins the Buddha in the Pure Land or spiritual world. Buddhist Psalms, Yamabe S. and Beck, L.A. Murray, 1921, page 86. Krishna, the all-encompassing name of God. Although God is known throughout the world by many different names, each of which describes some particular aspect of his glorious and attractive features, there is one name that expresses the sum total of God's infinite qualities and characteristics. This supreme, all-encompassing, and most powerful name of God is found in the oldest religious scriptures in the world, the Sanskrit Vedas of India, which state that the principal name of God is Krishna. Srila Prabhupada explains, when we speak of Krishna, we refer to God. There are many names for God throughout the world and throughout the universe, but Krishna is the supreme name according to Vedic knowledge. He further states, God has many names according to his activities, but because he possesses so many opulences, and because with these opulences he attracts everyone, he is called Krishna, all attractive. Sri Namamrita, the Nectar of the Holy Name, Los Angeles, Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, 1982, page 142. eBay. The spiritual qualities of Krishna's holy name are described throughout the Vedic literatures. The Padma Purana states, the holy name of Krishna is transcendently blissful. It bestows all spiritual benedictions, for it is Krishna himself, the reservoir of all pleasure. It is not a material name under any condition, and it is no less powerful than Krishna himself. Since Krishna's name is not contaminated by the material qualities, there is no question of its being involved with illusion. Krishna's name is always liberated and spiritual. It is never conditioned by the laws of material nature. This is because the name of Krishna and Krishna himself are identical. Since time immemorial, millions of devotees and saintly persons have chanted the name of Krishna to achieve spiritual perfection. But history records that it was widely popularized by Lord Chaitanya, an incarnation of Lord Krishna, who appeared in Bengal some five centuries ago and established the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra as the universal spiritual practice for the present age. According to Vedic cosmology, the material creation eternally passes through cycles of 4 ages. Each begins with a golden age, such a yuga. Then conditions progressively deteriorate, ending in Kali Yuga, an age characterized by quarrel and hypocrisy. For each of the 4 ages, the Vedas prescribe a universal method of self-realization just suited for that particular age. For instance, in such a yuga, the recommended path is mystic yoga, which involves a lifetime of unbroken yoga practice accompanied by strict vows of penance and austerity. We are presently near the beginning of the last age, Kali Yuga. In this age, people no longer have the endurance, willpower, or lifespan necessary to successfully practice the original yoga system described in the Vedas. The Vedic scriptures therefore advise for spiritual progress in this age of Kali. There is no alternative, no alternative, no alternative to chanting the holy name, the holy name, the holy name of the Lord. Brihanaradiya Puran. The Kalisantarana Upanishad specifically recommends chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. These 16 names composed of 32 syllables are the only means to counteract the evil effects of Kali Yuga. In all the Vedas, it is seen that to cross the ocean of nescience, there is no alternative to chanting the holy name. Lord Chaitanya's biographers record that he spent many years traveling all over India, spreading the chanting of the holy names of Krishna. He chanted the Hare Krishna mantra congregationally, kirtan, to the accompaniment of musical instruments, including drums and hand cymbals. The Lord also chanted the mantra quietly a specific number of times daily as a private meditation, japa. In the Sikshastaka, his famous prayers about the holy names of Krishna, Lord Chaitanya wrote, "Let there be all victory for the chanting of the holy name of Lord Krishna, which can cleanse the mirror of the heart and stop the miseries of the blazing fire of material existence." That chanting is a waxing moon and spreads the white lotus of good fortune for all living entities. It is the life and soul of all education. The chanting of the holy name of Krishna expands the blissful ocean of transcendental life. It gives a cooling effect to everyone and enables one to taste full nectar at every step. During his lifetime, Lord Chaitanya predicted that the holy names of Krishna would spread to every town and village in the world. This prophecy lay unfulfilled for 400 years, until the time of Bhaktivedanta Thakur, a great spiritual master in direct disciplic succession from Lord Chaitanya. In 1885, Bhaktivedanta wrote, Lord Chaitanya did not embed himself to liberate only a few men in India. Rather, his main objective was to emancipate all living entities of all countries throughout the entire universe and preach the eternal religion. There is no doubt that his unquestionable order will come to pass. Very soon, the unparalleled path of the congregation chanting of the Lord's holy name will be propagated all over the world. Oh, for that day when the fortunate English, French, Russian, German, and American people will take up the banners, drums, and hand cymbals and raise kirtan through the streets and towns. When will that day come? Sajjan Toshani. Bhaktivedanta vision became a reality in less than a century. In 1965, India's greatest spiritual and cultural ambassador, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, arrived in New York's East Village, the heart of the countercultural movement of the 60s. Within a year, Srila Prabhupada, 10th in the line of spiritual masters from Lord Chaitanya, had founded the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Very quickly, the sound of the chanting of Hare Krishna spread, first across America, then on to England and throughout the world. The Vedic scriptures predict that although the age of Kali is the most degraded of all, the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra will dramatically alter the present war-torn, hate-filled atmosphere of the world. These most ancient, timeless writings forecast a golden age, beginning with the widespread chanting of Hare Krishna, during which the painful disturbances of this age will gradually be mitigated, and people everywhere will be economically, politically, socially, culturally, and spiritually happy. Srila Prabhupada explains, Kali Yuga continues for 432,000 years, of which only 5,000 years have passed. Thus, there is still a balance of 427,000 years to come. Of these 427,000 years, the 10,000 years of the Sankirtana movement inaugurated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu 500 years ago provide the opportunity for the fallen souls of Kali Yuga to take to the Krishna consciousness movement, chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, and thus be delivered from the clutches of the material existence and return home back to Godhead. The movement to spread the congregation chanting of God's names. See Namamrita, page 249. Chapter 5, The Life of Sri Chaitanya. In the latter part of the 15th century, India's most extraordinary political, cultural, and religious reformer appeared in a small town in West Bengal. 500 years before Gandhi, this remarkable personality inaugurated a massive non-violent civil disobedience movement. He swept aside the stifling restrictions of the hereditary caste system and made it possible for people from any station in life to achieve the highest platform of spiritual enlightenment. In doing so, he broke the stranglehold of a proud intellectual elite on India's religious life. Ignoring all kinds of outmoded rituals and formulas, he introduced a revolutionary spiritual movement that was rapidly accepted all over India, a movement which, because of its universal appeal, has now spread all over the world. The name of this powerful reformer was Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the founder of the modern-day Hare Krishna movement. The Vedic scriptures of India had long predicted his birth, which occurred in 1486 in Mayapur, a quarter of the city of Navadvip. Great saints and scholars soon detected that he was not an ordinary human being, but the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, Lord Krishna, appearing as a great devotee of the Lord. Sri Chaitanya had little patience with ritualistic religious functions. And as he grew to young manhood, he began to carry out his divine mission. He wanted all people everywhere to have access to the actual experience of love of God, by which one can feel the highest spiritual ecstasies. This awakening, Sri Chaitanya taught, could be attained by Sankirtan, the chanting of the holy names of God, Hare Krishna mantra. Sri Chaitanya acquired many followers who immediately took up the chanting, sometimes performing it in their homes and sometimes in the streets of Navadvip. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtana movement immediately threatened the established groups in the social hierarchy. The Muslim rulers of Bengal and the hereditary Hindu priestly class, the caste priests who were attempting to artificially monopolize religious leadership. Members of both groups lodged complaints with the local Muslim ruler, Chant. Agreeing that Sri Chaitanya and his followers threatened the established order, the Qazi tried to suppress this growing Sankirtan movement. On his order, constables raided the home of one of Sri Chaitanya's followers and smashed the drums used in the chanting. The Qazi ordered that the chanting be immediately stopped, and he threatened that if he began again in Navadvip, he would be ruthless with those responsible. When informed of the raid, Sri Chaitanya immediately organized the largest peaceful civil disobedience movement in Indian history up to that time. On a pre-arranged evening, Sri Chaitanya and 100,000 of his followers suddenly appeared in the streets of Navadvip and divided into many well-organized chanting parties. As they danced through the city, the sound of the Hare Krishna mantra sounded in a deafening roar. Finally, the chanters converged on the residence of the Qazi, who hid inside. At Sri Chaitanya's invitation, however, the Qazi appeared and the two began negotiations. Speaking politely and with great logic and reason, Sri Chaitanya convinced the Qazi that the complaints against the Sankirtana were groundless. In a dramatic conversation, the Qazi himself became a follower of Sri Chaitanya and actively promoted and protected the Sankirtana movement. To this very day, Hindus visit the tomb of this Muslim magistrate to pay their respects. Since the time of the Qazi, the Muslim inhabitants of Navadvip have never interfered with the public chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, even during the time of the Hindu-Muslim riots. Not long after this important victory in his native town, Sri Chaitanya began to spread his movement all over India. For 6 years, he traveled the length and breadth of the country, chanting the Hare Krishna mantra and spreading love of God. At many places, crowds of hundreds of thousands of people would join with him in massive chanting parties. Nevertheless, he also encountered opponents, the strongest of whom were the Mayavadis, an elitist group of philosophers who had spread throughout India, twisting the meaning of the Vedic scriptures in a vain attempt to prove that God has no personality or form. The impersonalists also believed that spiritual enlightenment could be obtained only by a chosen few who knew Sanskrit and arduously studied the Vedanta Sutra. Throughout his travels, Sri Chaitanya struggled against the Mayavadis and succeeded in convincing many of them by the strength of his preaching. One of the greatest philosophers of the Mayavada school, Bhattacharya, tried to prevail over Sri Chaitanya in philosophical discussion but was defeated. Countering the Bhattacharya's impersonal explanation of God, Sri Chaitanya said, "The living entities are all individual persons and they are all parts and parcels of the Supreme Whole. If the parts and parcels are individual persons, the source of their emanation must not be impersonal. He is the supreme person among all relative persons." Then, out of his causeless mercy, Sri Chaitanya performed a wondrous miracle, manifesting before Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya his beautiful original spiritual form as Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Falling at Lord Chaitanya's feet, the former impersonalist philosopher surrendered to him and soon became a great devotee of the Lord. But the biggest confrontation with the Mayavadis was yet to come, and it occurred in the city that had for centuries been the capital of the Mayavada school, Benares. There, Lord Chaitanya stayed with his friends and devotees and continued his Sankirtana movement, attracting crowds of thousands wherever he went. Hearing reports of this, Prakashananda Saraswati, the leader of the prevailing Mayavada sect, began to criticize the Lord. A real spiritual leader, he said, would never involve himself in singing and dancing with all kinds of ordinary people. Ignorant of the spiritual significance of chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, he considered it mere sentiment. Prakashananda Saraswati believed a spiritualist should continually study abstract philosophy and engage in lengthy discussions about the absolute truth. A great clash between a popular non-sectarian universal religious movement and a stifling separatist philosophy was about to occur. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would soon destroy forever the impersonalist attempted domination over Indian spiritual thought and practice. The Lord's followers were extremely unhappy about the Mayavadis' constant criticism of him. So in order to pacify them, he accepted an invitation to a meeting of all the leading Mayavadis. After seating himself on the ground at the assembly, the Lord, exhibiting his supreme mystic potency, manifested from his body a spiritual effulgence more brilliant than the sun. The Mayavadis were amazed and immediately stood in respect. Then Prakashananda Saraswati inquired about why Sri Chaitanya chanted and danced instead of studying Vedanta philosophy. Lord Chaitanya, who in truth was extremely well versed in the Vedic teachings, replied, "I had to have taken to the Sankirtana movement instead of the study of Vedanta because I am a great fool." Indirectly, the Lord was criticizing the Mayavadis for being overly proud of their dry intellectual study of the Vedas, which had led them to false conclusions. "And because I am a great fool," Chaitanya continued, "my spiritual master forbade me to play with Vedanta philosophy. He said that it is better that I chant the holy name of the Lord, for this would deliver me from bondage." Sri Chaitanya then spoke a Sanskrit verse his spiritual master had told him to always remember. In this age of Kali, there is no alternative, there is no alternative, there is no alternative for spiritual progress other than the chanting of the holy name, the chanting of the holy name, the chanting of the holy name of God. Brihanaradi Puran. The discussion went on for hours. Finally, in one of the most astounding religious conversions of all time, Prakashananda Saraswati, the Mayavadi's greatest scholar, along with all his followers, surrendered to Lord Chaitanya and began to chant the holy names of Krishna with great enthusiasm. As a result of this conversion, the entire city of Benares adopted Sri Chaitanya's Sankirtana movement. Although Sri Chaitanya had been born a Brahmana, a member of the highest caste, he always said that such designations were external and behaved accordingly. Disregarding the social conventions of the age, he would stay in the homes of devotees from even the lowest caste and take meals with them. Indeed, he delivered his most esoteric teachings on the subject of love of God to Ramananda Roy, a member of a lower caste. Another of the Lord's disciples, Haridas Thakur, was born a Muslim and was thus considered an outcast in Hindu society. Yet, Sri Chaitanya elevated him to the exalted position of Namacharya, the exemplar of the chanting of the holy name of Krishna. Sri Chaitanya judged people not by their social status, but by their spiritual advancement. In this way, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu laid the foundation for a universal religion for all humankind, a scientific process of spiritual awakening that is now rapidly spreading around the globe. In this present age, when attendance at churches, temples, and mosques is diminishing daily, and the world is torn by violence between numerous religious and political sects, it is easy to see that people are growing more and more dissatisfied with external divisive religious formulas. People are hungering for an experience of spirituality that transcends all boundaries. Millions are now finding that experience in the worldwide Sankirtana movement of Lord Chaitanya, who said, "This Sankirtana movement is the prime benediction for the humanity at large because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss, and it enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious." Chapter 6. Haridas Thakur and the Prostitute. Strict followers of the caste system in 16th century India avoided all contact with Muslims. Yet Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, founder of the modern-day Hare Krishna movement, shattered all bonds of prejudice and bigotry by elevating Haridas Thakur, who was born in a Muslim family, to the position of Namacharya, or the exemplar of the holy name of Krishna. In this way, Sri Chaitanya practically demonstrated one of his central teachings. If any person is seen to be a great devotee of the Lord, he should be honored and respected regardless of his birth or social status. Such a spiritually advanced person can completely transform the lives of others. In the following incident from the life of Haridas Thakur, we see how a beautiful prostitute became a great saint through the power of his chanting. In the forest of Benapola, in what is known as Bangladesh, the solitary monk sat before the sacred Tulsi plant chanting the holy names of Krishna day and night. Haridas Thakur would chant 300,000 names of God each day. The body of this extraordinary saint, who was constantly in trance, was maintained by spiritual strength from chanting, and he barely slept at all. He was so influential that all the neighboring people offered their respect to him. But a landholder named Ramachandra Khan, the district tax collector, was envious of devotees of Lord Krishna. Unable to tolerate the great respect that was being offered to Haridas Thakur, he schemed to dishonor him. By no means, however, could he find any fault in Haridas' character. Therefore, he called for some local prostitutes and plotted with them to discredit the saint. Ramachandra Khan said, "There is a mendicant named Haridas Thakur. All of you devise a way to deviate him from his vows of austerity." Austerity means renunciation of sensual pleasures, especially the pleasure of sex. Ramachandra Khan selected a ravishing young beauty to break the monk's vow of celibacy and dishonor him. I shall attract the mind of Haridas Thakur within 3 days, he promised. Ramachandra Khan said to the prostitute, "My constable will go with you so that as soon as he sees you with Haridas Thakur, he will immediately arrest him and bring both of you to me." The prostitute replied, "First let me unite with him once. Then the second time I shall take your constable with me to arrest him." At night, the prostitute, after dressing herself seductively, went to Haridas' cottage. Haridas was young, strong, and handsome, and the girl was eager to be alone with him. After offering respects to the Tulsi plant, she went to the door of Haridas' hut, offered him obeisances, and stood there. Exposing part of her body to his view, she sat down on the threshold and spoke to him in sweet words. "My dear Haridas, O great preacher, great devotee, you are so beautifully built and your youth is just beginning. What woman could control her mind after seeing you? I am eager to unite with you. My mind is greedy for this. If I don't obtain you, I shall not be able to keep body and soul together. Haridas Thakur replied, I shall accept you without fail, but you will have to wait until I have finished chanting my regular rounds on my beads. Until that time, please sit and listen to the chanting of the holy name. As soon as I am finished, I shall fulfill your desire. Hearing this, the prostitute remained sitting there while Haridas Thakur chanted on his beads until the light of morning appeared. When she saw that it was morning, the prostitute stood up and left. Coming before Ramachandra Khan, she informed him of all the news. Today, Haridas Thakur has promised to enjoy with me, she said. Tomorrow, I shall certainly have union with him. The next night, when the prostitute returned, Haridas Thakur gave her many assurances. Last night you were disappointed. Please excuse my offense. I shall certainly accept you. Please sit down and hear the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra until my regular chanting is finished. Then your desire will surely be fulfilled. After offering her obeisances to the Tulasi plant and Haridas Thakur, she again sat down at the door. Hearing Haridas Thakur chanting the Hare Krishna Mantra, she also chanted, O my Lord Hari, O my Lord Hari. When the night came to an end, the prostitute was restless. Seeing this, Haridas said, I have vowed to chant 10 million names in 1 month. I had taken this vow, but now it is nearing its end. I thought that today I would be able to finish my chanting of the Hare Krishna Mantra. I tried my best to chant the holy name all night, but I still did not finish. Tomorrow I will surely finish and my vow will be fulfilled. Then it will be possible for me to enjoy with you in full freedom. The prostitute returned to Ramachandra Khan and informed him of what had happened. The next day she came earlier at the beginning of the evening. She stayed all night. Again, as she began to hear Haridas Thakur chanting, she also chanted Hari Hari, the holy name of the Lord. Today it will be possible for me to finish my chanting, the saint said. Then I shall satisfy all your desires. The night ended with Haridas still chanting, but now, because of her constant hearing of Haridas's chanting, the prostitute's mind had changed. Now fully purified, she began to cry and fell at the feet of Haridas Thakur, confessing that Ramachandra Khan had appointed her to pollute him. Because I have taken the profession of a prostitute, she said, I have performed unlimited sinful acts. My Lord, be merciful to me, deliver my fallen soul. Haridas replied, I know everything about Ramachandra Khan's conspiracy. He is nothing but an ignorant fool, so his activities do not disturb me. On the very day Ramachandra Khan was planning his intrigue against me, I would have left this place. But because you came, I stayed for 3 more days just to deliver you. Kindly act as my spiritual master, she begged him. Instruct me in my duty so that I can get relief from this material existence. Haridas answered, immediately go home and distribute the Brahmanas whatever property you have. Then come back to this room and stay here forever in Krishna consciousness. Chant the Hare Krishna mantra continuously and render service to the Tulasi plant by watering her and offering prayers to her. In this way, you will very soon get the opportunity to be sheltered at the lotus feet of Krishna. After thus instructing the prostitute in the chanting of the Hare Krishna, Haridas Thakur stood up and left, continuously chanting the Krishna's holy name. Following the order of her spiritual master, the distributed to the local priests whatever household possessions she had. Following Haridas's example, she began chanting the holy name of Krishna 300,000 times a day. She chanted throughout the entire day and night, and she worshipped the Tulasi plant. By sometimes eating frugally and other times fasting, she conquered her senses. As soon as her senses were controlled, symptoms of love of God appeared in her person. That the prostitute became a great saint, and her fame spread throughout the land. Because she was advanced in spiritual life, many devotees of the Lord came to see her. Seeing the sublime character of this former prostitute, everyone was astonished. They glorified the influence of Haridas Thakur and offered their obeisances to him. As for Ramachandra Khan, he was eventually ruined by the Lord's arrangement. Meanwhile, Haridas Thakur continued his travels, always preaching the glories of the holy name about which he often said, "And the rising sun immediately dissipates all the world's darkness, which is deep like an ocean. So the holy name of the Lord, if chanted once without offenses, can dissipate all the reactions of a living being's sinful life. All glories to that holy name of the Lord, which is auspicious for the entire world." To this day, thousands of pilgrims each year visit the tomb of Haridas Thakur, who, although born a Muslim, became the exemplar of the chanting of the holy name and one of India's greatest devotee saints.